My first exposure to the JRPG genre was with Final Fantasy on the PS1. My friend had a demo disc of Final Fantasy VIII and we were both glued to it. We both hadn't played anything like it at the time. I couldn't get enough of the demo and decided to jump into the series. This led me to play Final Fantasy VII and IX, and I fell in love with both of them. I have stayed with the series and usually look forward to a new entry. On the GameCube, I found the Tales of series with Tales of Symphonia and saw the magic that it brought. I wanted to give this background and where I came from with my experience with JRPGs. I have tried other JRPGs and some that are really great indie JRPGs, but one series I never played was the Legend of Heroes games. Even when I started creating reviews on YouTube, I would get a few comments suggesting I should check out the series. While I cover big AAA games, I do try to give a lot of attention to indies along with big games that just don't get the attention that they deserve. So with The Legend of Heroes, The Trails of Cold Steel coming to the PS4, I felt like it was a good opportunity to try this series out. Fans of the series said that this was a great point to start for newcomers. While most reviewers tend to wait till the end of the video to say what they thought about the game they are covering, I am going to outright say that I love this game and it definitely deserves more attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review for The Legend of Heroes, The Trails of Cold Steel. The game focuses its gameplay around combat and exploration. The combat is the main focus. The battle system here is great and will be familiar to anyone who has experienced a turn-based battle system. There's a lot going on within the fights. You have your basic attacks, and these attacks help to build up your craft points. Crafts are specific skills that each character has. These can be anything from useful attacks for hitting many people, causing status effects on enemies, or healing your team. If you can store up enough craft points, then you can unleash these flashy and powerful moves.
Rest in peace.
These are devastating attacks and will usually clear the battlefield of weaker enemies. I really enjoyed the flashy moves and they were rewarding to use. In addition to all of this, you have your art moves. These are essentially your magical abilities. Each of the characters have different magic bases that are slowly leveled up. There are different ones that you come across with their own magical abilities, and you can also slot different magical moves so that you can have something else in your arsenal, while also being able to have these orbs that help you out by buffing your stats. This is where the game adds some customization in with the characters that you use. I like this system here because you really get to kind of pick and choose what you want characters to use, and also maybe buff out some of the stats that some characters need some help in. A small option that I do want to make note of is how the game lets you play in a turbo mode. You will probably notice how some of my footage moves really fast, and that's because I played most of the game in turbo mode. This mode cranks up the speed of the game, and it's very much appreciated when you're grinding out experience points. The one downside is it's hard to go back to the normal speed after playing in turbo mode, as the game feels like it's running in slow motion. Another element of the battle is how you can change your position on the battlefield. You can use this as a means to reposition yourself to dodge an attack or flee some of the enemies to heal. Most of the battles won't have you considering your position, but this is very much needed in the tougher boss encounters. Many bosses will have attacks that will hit a certain area, and some of your party members will be better off if you reposition them, or you can even try to cancel their attacks. Either way, boss fights very much have you using everything within the combat system to try and defeat them. This happens more so in the second half of the game. These harder fights become a strategic dance of trying to maintain your party, unleash their special moves for greater damage, and try to anticipate the boss's attacks. These fights can be really tough on hard, and they're really rewarding when you get a strategy that works against them.
Give it up, everyone! Of course.
Here we go! Go!
I'll get you up!
One last thing I need to mention about the combat system is how the link system works. So there's an interesting system that is at play while you're in battle. You can link two party members together. Essentially, they will grow in combat proficiency as they level up their link. These links consist of one character taking damage for another person, either healing them or even countering an attack from an enemy. Also, you will be able to do these attacks with your linked partner, where you can do an attack together, a stronger attack together, or you can fight as a team and do one attack where everyone kind of gets in on it. Some of these are quite flashy, just like the special moves you get to use. I very much like the use of the link system in this game, as it really makes sense in that these party members would get better as they fought together, and I like how this kind of works into the whole team dynamic. Other story events will also give you bonus experience points to increase the levels of your links. The combat system does have a lot going on here, but don't let that deter you from playing this game. There's a lot to pay attention to, but I wouldn't call this an overly complicated battle system, just an involved one. When not in combat, you'll be talking to different characters and walking around different areas. There's a decent amount of exploration with some of the alternate paths in the dungeons, and each of the different towns feature many different buildings to enter. Navigating the dungeons can be pretty simple yet enjoyable. I do like how the towns feel a bit more active and lived in. You will complete side missions along with sometimes answering questions that will affect your academic rating at the end of each chapter. If you do well, you get an extra bonus item. I do like how there are elements that feed back into the game taking place in a school.
Not bad.
And the black makes us look all classy, too.
Oh, what am I even doing in this getup?
Wow! That makes your boobies look even bigger!
The story is another area that this game excels at. The story focuses on Reen and his classmates that are in a special class at the Thor's Military Academy. The first few chapters decide to focus on the characters and really on how this group starts to work as a team. There are some different issues that come up early on because each of the students come from a different background. With this, we see that there's this sort of a class system with nobles being at the top. Characters within your class are a mix of nobles and non-nobles. This creates some interesting tension. Along with this, you have characters trying to help each other, or others just trying to deal with misunderstandings. Through this, there's some good drama along with some good humor. I very much appreciated seeing these characters grow into working as a unit. You start to see these characters as just one solidified team. Through this, there's a bunch of little stories that help to flesh out these characters. There's a big threat that slowly builds throughout the game, and I appreciated how the story did show restraint within its early hours by not focusing on this big threat, but instead focusing on the characters. This allowed the threat to have a sense of presence when they showed up, along with when you're in these dire situations, they felt more earned. Also, a large portion of the game features your cast of characters going to different homes of the cast, so you get to see different cultures and people throughout the game. All of these journeys both help to flesh out the world and the characters' backgrounds. I found myself enjoying the narrative from the very beginning all the way to the very end. I love the cast of characters along with the story. These are people you begin to care about, and the game has a whole lot of charm. The story does leave you with an exciting cliffhanger, and I very much wanted to start the second game right away. As I said at the start, I love my time with this game, and I did have a few flaws along the way. The big one that I would notice would how I'd be in a cutscene with characters talking, and then the game wouldn't have any audio for the characters, and then the audio would kind of come back in after a few sentences later. I think this must have something to do with the English cast not recording all the lines within the game, because it is normal to go into sections of the story where you need to read everything and there's no voice acting. But the transitioning between having voice acting, then no voice acting, and then voice acting again in the same conversation can be a bit odd. Also, I do feel like the dungeons are very open with lots of unused space. The cities feel right, but I think the dungeons could have used something else. I do think that this probably has something to do with this game originally coming out on the VITA and probably having some restrictions. Again, this is something that I did notice, but it doesn't hurt the overall experience. Lastly, I have to mention the soundtrack. The soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. I especially liked how the tracks would change when you're in a boss fight and your characters are dying, so you're about to lose the fight and then the music will change. But then if you can get them all to come back, then the music will kind of change what it was at the beginning of the fight. Everything from the town themes to the battle themes are all great. Here are a few tracks from the game. I absolutely love this game. I can see why many fans were suggesting that I play it. You can feel the charm from this title right away. You'll find yourself getting attached to these cast of characters. I really love watching them work through their disagreements with each other to finally be this team. There are some nice moments when they throw themselves into danger to save others, and it feels earned with all their prior development. The story definitely leaves you with an exciting cliffhanger, and the combat system is also great. I really like the use of the link system within the game as it added another layer to the combat. The soundtrack is fantastic. I couldn't find a bad track within the game. I'm so happy I decided to try this series, and now I want to play all of them. I do think it deserves more attention, and in a way, this delightful title is a bit underrated. If you love Japanese RPGs, then you owe it to yourself to play this one.
Oh my God!